So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the NALSAR Public Policy Group's inaugural event of the new academic year. Before we begin, we would like to present a bouquet to our guest of honor today. And we have members of the Public Policy Group, Mohammad Ashik and Goem Patalia, to do this. So Ashik and Goem, please do the honors. We also have a bouquet for Mr. Gogoi's secretary, Ms. Sakshi. So, thank you so much for joining us. So we are honored to have Mr. Gaurav Gogoi, the inaugural speaker of the Public Policy Group for the academic year 2024-25. Mr. Gogoi is a political leader from the Indian National Congress, a three-time member of parliament. He currently represents the Jorhat parliamentary constituency of Assam in the 18th Lok Sabha. Mr. Gogoi was the deputy leader of the Indian National Congress in the 17th Lok Sabha, the youngest person to occupy the position in the party's parliamentary history. He's been a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, Defense, and Railways, as well as the Joint Committee on the Biological Diversity Amendment Bill of 2021, Committee on Government Assurances, and the Joint Committee on the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019. He has also been the convener of the Parliamentarians Group for Clean Air and the Parliamentarians Group for Children. His areas of interest include economics, foreign policy, climate change, youth empowerment, and education. He holds a Master of Public Administration from New York University and a Bachelor of Technology from the Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University in New Delhi. He has been recognized as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum. Mr. Gogoi will speak to us this evening about the politics of Parliament based on his own decade-long experience as an MP. He will make a short opening statement, after which we will open the floor for questions. He would like to keep the discussion, this event, more interactive. But we must remember that he has a flight to catch later this evening, so we must make sure that we do not delay his departure. Mr. Gogoi, thank you once again for accepting the NALSAR Public Policy Group's invitation to speak to our students. We are grateful for your time and your presence. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you very much for attending this event. I did not expect this turnout. So kudos to the Public Policy Group and to the organizers for having, from start till now, having done a fantastic job of coordinating with my office. I must say that I'm very impressed with the greenery in your campus. And I do sense a slight streak of rebellion in the air. And a very fierce, independent spirit, which I hope that you will always preserve. I do have friends from NALSA, from the 2002, 2003 batch. And I do see a difference when I engage with them, when I interact with them, vis-a-vis other law graduates from other parts of the country. There seems to be something in the air which makes people be passionate about human rights, passionate about pro bono work, and passionate about different issues. So for me, I'm quite happy, very happy to be here and be engaged with all of you. As you heard in my introduction, that I come from a background of public policy, public administration. So I did my master's in public administration with a focus on management and non-profit management. And in my course, not only we looked at how can we manage organizations working in the development sector better, but we also looked at how public sector, how local bodies, municipalities, what are lessons of management that we can find when we work with people who are working in governments and municipalities. And I found that course to be very interesting because it helped me realize that bureaucracies across the world are similar. I thought that the Indian bureaucracy was unique in terms of its dependence on paperwork, but I realized that the same exists in the UK bureaucracy as Australian bureaucracy as well when we were doing our case studies. So essentially, bureaucracies across the world have a structural problem, some structural faults, and therefore bureaucracies need to be strengthened and reformed everywhere, and especially in India, right from this topmost bureaucracy, which is the union government, right down to our tertiary level of bureaucracy, which is the municipality and panchayats. We need to uh, push them with greater sense of financial freedom, with greater sense of autonomy, with greater resources, both in terms of human resources, so much more technically skilled people, as well as give them, the support of getting domain experts to give them the best domain knowledge on a wide variety of issues, whether that's municipality level parking, whether that's municipality level waste management, to the management of municipality or schools in your panchayat. And it is with that sense that I also approach the parliament. I look to the parliament as an institution, and as an institution that also needs to be reformed, as an institution that needs to be strengthened, and as an institution where the voice of ordinary Indian citizens needs to be heard with that much more force, and maybe with that sense of NALSAR fierceness and independence also. I've had the privilege of um, traveling and meeting to different countries and meeting my counterparts from different parts of the world. And as part of my research on various bills, I do look at how our Indian Parliament functions in comparison to parliaments in Europe, North America, and in Asia. And with that sense is how I wanted to kind of, you know, pose it in my opening remarks, is that as someone who comes both from a political background, but also has spent a considerable amount of time outside of politics in development world, with a background in public administration, with an interest in reforming or strengthening or modernizing Indian Parliament, what is my wish list as I head into my third term of as a member of Parliament? What would I like to see in the new Parliament? Well, first of all, what I would like to see is a greater number of sittings. I feel we don't sit in Parliament for long enough. And I feel that's a trend that already exists in our state assemblies. And that's a trend now which is getting replicated in the Indian Parliament. Our state assemblies sit for far too less, and gradually the Indian Parliament, from a high of sitting close to 100 days in a year, is coming down to, let's say, mid-70s and sometimes to 60 days. So out of 365 days, we are sitting in Parliament. Parliament convenes for close to, let's say, 2 months, right? 60 days. So I feel that if we are getting paid for 365 days, 12 months, then we need to be doing our job in Parliament. And Parliament also needs to sit for that much more. What would that do? What would that enable is that not only will we have time for greater deliberations on bills that the government wants to bring forward or that the cabinet has passed, but along with that, we will have time to discuss on policy-related issues outside of legislative bills. You often hear the term productivity being talked about when we talk about parliament. But what is the metric of productivity? The metric of productivity is bills being passed. But surely, parliament is beyond bills. Parliament is about debate. Parliament is about scrutiny. Parliament is about accountability. So when the entire country is talking about the education sector, when you have columns written about what are the malaces in the present Indian education sector, should we not have more sittings so that in addition to the bills being passed, we can debate under the Rule 193 on education? As we see the impact of climate change with heavier rainfall in one day, concentrated amount of rainfall in one day, and we see how our infrastructure, whether it's Delhi, Ahmedabad, Bombay, or Guwahati, not being able to cope with cloudbursts, then surely can we not have a discussion on climate resilient infrastructure? And what does that mean for us? Can we not have a debate? I believe you've had a recently opened a cell on international trade law. Can we not have a debate on international trade? That where does India stand vis-a-vis its trade deficit with China, with Russia? What is India's position as Europe wants to impose carbon taxes on us? How do we protect the interest of our fishermen in the WTO? Is WTO still a working body for India? Is the United Nations still a representative forum where a country of the size and scale and power and magnitude of India and others are they able to voice? Can we not have an issue on panchayati reform, on municipality reform? The 14 Finance and 15 Finance Commission allocates a lot of funds to our municipalities. But are the municipalities able to do their job when it comes to parking, drainage, sewage, power, waste management? So there's a lot of things that we can achieve and have a high-level debate which brings attention to that issue, which brings attention of the concerned minister and of the highest levels of our leadership on that issue. And maybe that can act as a motivating factor, as an impetus to a policy reform, to a gazette notification, which might have a far-reaching impact. So I do hope to see greater number of sittings in Parliament and state assemblies. The second thing on my wish list is more robust standing committees. Now we talk about productivity, and again, the metrics of productivity being how many bills got passed. Yes, but how many bills got sent to Parliament Standing Committee? Because if Parliament is where we are debating a bill, it's the Standing Committee where we are scrutinizing a bill line by line by line. It is a Parliament Standing Committee where on a bill, we are seeking opinions from civil society, experts, lawyers, and getting a wider range of feedback and able to put forward the right language to amend or reform a bill. We see standing committees like the committee that I belong to, Finance, having the power to call upon the RBI governor and having the power to call upon the SEBI chief and ask them questions related to most pressing concerns affecting India. But do we have the power? Or is it the convention to call upon the CBI chief? To call upon the ED chief? So if there is parliament scrutiny over heads of financial regulators, where is the parliament scrutiny over the heads of law enforcement agencies? Can we therefore not, all this form of parliament scrutiny, will it not lead to greater or much more calibrated or cautious approach of law enforcement agencies? Which is what we see in certain democracies. If you look at Germany, if you look at UK, Even if you look at the US can call upon the FBI chief and subject them to questions which are televised live. Now, I am not in favor of televising our standing committees because television also leads to grandstanding. Thankfully, although tutu meme we do in the well of the house, once we enter a standing committee, we take our job seriously and we work with a sense of bipartisanship. But then I do want us standing committees to have that much more teeth and have that much more power. And Parliament scrutiny over all important agencies and departments in all ministries should be there. We can call upon the CGM of railways. We can call upon the CGM of SBI. I think in today's age, when there is questions related to technology, surveillance, overreach of law enforcement, I think there is a need for greater parliament scrutiny over law enforcement agencies. Unfortunately, the third thing on my wish list is slightly controversial. There are being opinion pieces being written in newspapers today about the conduct of our presiding officers. And I think that is unfortunate. I think questions should be raised. In a democracy, nobody is above questions. But there is no smoke without fire. And if I were to offer, from a very limited understanding, what would be a way forward, then I would like to see this convention being followed, that when we elect, or not elect, when we nominate the pro tem speaker to administer oath to newly elected MPs, the convention being followed right now is the senior most MP. The senior most MP, who's a 3-term, 4-term, 5-term, 6-term, they sit on the chair and they administer the oath. But when we nominate presiding officers, that convention of senior most somehow is no longer relevant. I feel if we follow that same convention of having very senior MPs sitting on the chair of presiding officer, they may be guided by the experience, they may be guided by their commitment to parliamentary democracy, to conduct themselves in a manner so that opinion pieces will no longer be written about them. That is only a practical suggestion that I'm offering. I think it's an important question to debate, to deliberate, especially when it comes to the issue of defections. We see the role of the Speaker's chair, both in Lok Sabha and in Vidhan Sabha, as being very important. And we see the judicial authorities respecting the Speaker's autonomy and creating that check and balance so that the judiciary often is not overturning the decision of the Speaker and respecting the power of the Speaker, whether that being of the Lok Sabha or the Vidhan Sabha. Therefore, if there is no scope for judicial activism in that sphere, then we have to think of incremental measures so that a robust parliamentary democracy in India has a robust and a conduct of the person occupying the speaker's chair. So I do hope that in the upcoming year, in this third term Lok Sabha, we'll see the presiding officers being neutral in their tone, being neutral in their body language, and being neutral in their advisories. Fourth, as someone who comes from a public policy background, I do see the immense support and benefit that I get from a legislative fellow through the PRS fellowship. But that PRS fellowship only exists to 60 MPs. Why doesn't the Indian Parliament of the 21st century, of 2024, have a greater secretariat so that we can support each and every MP with legislative drafting, so that we can support each and every MP with the judicious implementation of the MP-led fund. We can support each and every MP with an office space to work, because literally we are working out of our homes. Ministers may have huge homes, but they are first-time MPs who are working from very cramped and basic quarters, and it's unfair to them that they don't have a functional office. I clearly think that we have the space to allocate an office to a parliament, member of parliament, so that they get the support both in legislation, so that they get the support in implementation of the MP-led fund, and they get the support in following up with the queries with ministers and departments. So greater resources. And lastly, sorry, two more points. What I would like to see is that a more accountable parliament, a more responsive parliament. I think there is tremendous benefit that we have through the format of start questions and unstart questions. We get a lot of information out through the start and unstart questions, which is not there. And surely that is the feature of democracy. If elections give you the chance to elect a government for a specific term, then parliament gives you the chance to hold that government accountable. And parliament gives you the platform to get your questions answered from the parliament. And the parliament gives you the platform to practice democracy for the every day of the term that a party is allocated for. So therefore, the parliament and a fully functioning, a fully robust parliament is as important, as a fair and a neutral election. If we see a parliament that is not accountable, then surely then we are not achieving the objective of having an electoral democracy. And therefore, what I would like to see is that not only we get answers from ministries through the start questions and unstart questions, but parliamentarians raise a lot of important issues related to the constituency through other parliamentary procedures, such as the 0 hour, such as the 377. And we raise a lot of important matters. And I think it behoves a representative of 17 lakh to 18 lakh voters that if they've managed to somehow squeeze in a motion related to the constituency through 377 or through any other format, they should get the answer from the government and the concerned ministry from that. I think the more answers we get through the various procedures and tools that is available to us, the more information is in the hands of the people. And the more information being in the hands of people, the more robust a democracy is. And lastly, what I would like to see is to see myself protesting. Because when I'm protesting, I don't see myself later. Because somehow I'm just not there. I think we are very civic and we are very mature. When we go on television debates, our mic doesn't get cut off. We obviously argue with the television anchor for more time, but also we conduct ourselves with civility. And when the moderator says, time's up, time's up. So if we can conduct ourselves with civility on a television debate, our spokespersons conduct themselves, and we have a robust and noisy discussion. But we don't see on television what we are seeing on the Sunset TV, where suddenly somebody's shouting, but you don't know who. The country has the right to see the parliament both in the narrow format and in the wide-angle landscape format. We cannot always show the Sunset TV in portrait mode. We need to show it in landscape mode also. So I do hope that if we conduct and televise the proceedings and we conduct ourselves, I won't say the television newsroom is the benchmark. But still, if television anchors can moderate and we can have a discussion, debate, even if we shout over each other, but at some point we all respect the decision of the anchor, surely we can have maybe a less noisy, a much more civilized, participatory debate on important issues inside the parliament. So that's my wish list. It's not only my wish list. I must say I've had many colleagues of mine in the parliament, both from the treasury and the opposition benches, saying some of the similar things related to the power of standing committees, related to more debate on issues outside of bills. So we are a cohort and a bipartisan cohort of people who want to see the Indian Parliament responding as it should in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gogoi, for those thought-provoking remarks and that wish list. And I'm sure, just like your colleagues, many students here might also share the wish list that you have expressed. And since you've already felt dissent in the air, so in the spirit of dissent, we can open the floor to questions, Saksham. What we'll do is that we'll take 3 questions at a time, yeah? So that we'll also keep an eye on the time. So it's 5:20 now. Saksham, you go first. Mike, just... You have a question.
Hello. Yeah. Sorry to be like, I'll be blunt because your party is the only party which can bring up upon parliamentary reform. Sir, I have a few questions. Sir, considering there is a procedure called PMQs, Prime Minister Questions in UK, which is directly confrontational with the Prime Minister on a selective day, on a selected day every week, would answer questions put up by the entire House and would have a one-on-one with the leader of the opposition. Considering our PM has not taken a press conference in, like, I don't know, 11 years now. So do you think that something bringing in such a mechanism would help? Secondly, sir, do you believe the Rajya Sabha needs to be strengthened in a way, because a lot of the bills are passed through the money bill loop? The electoral bonds themselves were passed through this way. So maybe closing that money bill loop is a probable thing. Would your party or would you be working in that direction? And thirdly, something based on what you mentioned regarding the standing committees. What we have seen is that post 2019, opposition members have been thrown out to the extreme null voids of the standing committees, and president of opposition representation has been deleted. So do you think what used to be based on this trust, on this commodity between the parliamentarians, rules now should be codified as such, which earlier, same with the deputy speaker thing. So this should be codified, so therefore no future government can just ignore these precedents which have been there. So that's all.
Since Saksham has asked 3 questions, but so do you mind if we take 2 more? Yeah? Okay.
Good evening, sir. Firstly, thank you for your comments and for sharing your vision. Among all the visions that you shared, I concurred with them, but I also had an additional vision that I'd like to ask you about, which is the avenues for youth participation directly in our parliament and in our policy making procedures. In countries like the US, Canada, etc., we see high school students helping legislators conduct research in juvenile justice. We see undergraduate students helping them actually draft and legislate those bills. But in India, no matter how much we explore, there are very limited opportunities for the youth to participate directly in these procedures as policy makers rather than simply as policy followers. So, as a sitting member of parliament, about to pursue your 3rd term, as you said, what do you think are some measures we can take for the youth to be more directly involved in these proceedings? Thank you.
In this round, Harsha's next. Just if someone can pass the mic down.
Hi, Mr. Gogoi. My question pertains to particularly foreign policy area, since you mentioned foreign policy as an interest. Despite any other subject being discussed in the House, foreign policy is something which need to be seen representative of India. And if there are stark contrasts in your opinion as to one particular stance taken against the government, yet there's an onus on you to represent, the combined parliament as India. What are the dynamics of a debate that goes on regarding foreign policy, and how do you manage, to keep the debate in such a manner as to not contradict the views of the state of India, however, yet keep the discussion and the contrasting opinions on foreign policy alive?
So we can start with these and Ajay, one more. Okay. Sorry, you had your hand.
Hello, sir. Here. Yeah. So my question will be a bit off from the earlier questions, but I remember you asking a question. I think it was a start or unstart question in the Parliament about Indian policy on the abstention in the UN voting on the ceasefire in Palestine and Gaza. And I honestly want to understand what exactly is the role, or what exactly are the, I would say, effects of these discussions on foreign policy in the in the Indian Parliament, and how they span out in educational spaces like NALSAR or other educational institutions. For example, a group of some students here filed a petition with the administrator, the vice chancellor here, to cut all ties with two Israeli universities, and that has come to no avail. So I want to understand how it is working in the parliament and what kind of consequences it can have in our educational and dissenting spaces.
So I told the moderator that I'll make a short opening statement and give longish answers to the questions. But since given the fact that I spoke for 20 minutes, I think I'm going to do the opposite. I feel like I'm going to break my own rule. I'm going to try. I've already given a slightly longish opening statement, and therefore try and give as short and succinct answers as possible so that more questions can be asked. All of your questions require deep reflection, and many have given suggestions. Now, in order to do a proper analysis of those suggestions, one does not have enough time, and therefore that's the disclaimer I'm giving. So I don't want to sound as if I'm rejecting a suggestion, but what I'm giving is my initial gut feel on those suggestions. So the first suggestion was a view on Prime Minister questions. I think convention happens, you build convention in an incremental manner and a brick by brick manner. And therefore, the convention that currently exists in today's parliament is that when we have the President of India speaking on an issue or giving her president's address, we move a motion of thanks, as you saw, in which the leader of the opposition makes the charges on behalf of the opposition, and the Prime Minister responds to those charges at the end. And that is as close that we have to a question and to the Prime Minister's question, which you see both in UK and in Australia. Should there be more on that? I mean, and the other where we did see that was during the no confidence motion, where again I moved the last no confidence motion on behalf of the opposition on the issue of Manipur, and we saw the remarks being given by the Prime Minister. Other than that, what we've seen in the past is an episodic debate between the Prime Minister and the leader of opposition. I feel that is going to be the convention for now. What I would like to see as an incremental reform is, whether it's the Chief Minister or the Prime Minister, we would like to see them sit in the House more. Whether sometimes, if you look at state assemblies, the Chief Minister often gets up to speak on behalf of his minister, because the minister has given a very limited reply, and the Chief Minister goes ahead and expands that reply. And we often see this format in the legislative assemblies. I think we can see the same convention being followed in the parliament also, that the prime minister on certain issues goes beyond and does lay a statement, and I think that would be uh, that would add to our parliamentary traditions, that would make our parliamentary traditions stronger. They are, as you said, I think we have this notion of looking towards the Western democracies, and just kind of getting into this copy paste model, that this is there, I like it, why can't we do it? But we also have to look at where we are now and what are our priorities and what are our pressing concerns, and in terms of the all the major things that we can reform the Indian Parliament in its current sense. What is the most important reform that we need to push for? Maybe defections is a bigger issue than PMQs. So I think, therefore, I like the idea, but would I say that's the number one idea on my wish list? It's not. On the second thing, with respect to the Rajya Sabha, I do feel that it's a good suggestion that you codify um, the procedure of money bills, so that um, not every issue can be converted in a money bill. So I think we learn this lesson uh, through our own bitter experience, and we have to figure out how to plug this loophole. And maybe codifying could be a solution, but that is, again, I would say that it's my individual view, but I do like the question. I think it's an important question, and I think it requires greater deliberation. On standing committee, as I said, um again, we have seen that if there's a sensitive topic, a joint parliamentary committee is being constituted. If there is a controversial environmental related law, and if the chairman of the environmental committee happens to be Mr. Jairam Ramesh, we will create a joint parliamentary committee so that the chairman is not Mr. Jairam Ramesh. So, we have to find out that way also, that bills which should just go to the committee, because that committee has had considerable expertise in that domain. So for the information technology, the data protection, instead of going to the IT committee, which has had so many deliberations on various matters related to data protection, privacy, competition, it goes to a committee of members who have not maybe dealt with that. So we have to be careful of this practice, and there is this loophole that exists, that bills which are important are not sent to the concerned ministry, and a specific joint JPC gets constituted, which may not have members with the same level of expertise and knowledge as that concerned standing committee does. I'm all for university students engaging with MPs. I do believe if all MPs have the support of an office, uh, resources, both financial and logistical resources, all MPs would like to engage with university students. I think it's a logistical issue. I don't think there is any rocket science. We will always like to do it and have this more university students come in and be part of it. And more than university students, I would like MPs to be engaged with the institutions of their respective constituencies, because those students would graduate and move on to a job. But if I have an institutional partnership, suppose I am your local MP and have an institutional partnership with a public policy group, then the students may keep graduating, but I keep working on a particular matter related to public policy with the public policy group. So there is an institutional memory that takes place. So and I keep saying this, that across, whether it's MPs or district administrations or state governments, we need to develop institutional partnerships with local academia, so that we have greater research on that locality, on that local area, and we're able to do that much more field work, and we're able to, again, do evaluations later on. I don't know why foreign policy is a taboo inside Parliament. Foreign policy is an issue in our elections. We talk about Pakistan and China in our election rhetoric. We talk about Pakistan and China and USA on television debates. So why can't and a party spokesperson talk about it? But MPs cannot talk about it or are not talking about it inside Parliament due to some convention that foreign policies are too sensitive a matter to be debated inside the Parliament. I think if it can be debated on a TV and in an election stage, surely it can be debated inside the Parliament. And inside the Parliament, every political party would ensure that its best, most capable, most knowledgeable speakers speak with both a sense of responsibility and a sense of knowledge on important matters related to foreign policy. And today, foreign policy is not just about bilateral relations between India and has also got to do with Indian businesses who want to work in foreign countries. It's also got to do with visas of our students and professionals. It's also got to do with trade and the export and import. I come from Assam and we export Assam tea. I want to talk about foreign trade. I want to talk about how the diaspora of Andhra or Telangana, what are their aspirations in the US or Europe, wherever they are. So I think foreign policy needs to be uh, this tag of taboo of on foreign policy related discussions in Parliament need to go. And I do support Indian students getting active on foreign policy matters. I myself, before joining politics, had set up a youth organization called Youth Forum on Foreign Policy, and we were setting up chapters in various universities and cities for young professionals and university students to be much more engaged and aware on foreign policy matters. And if there is a view on Palestine which the students of NALSAR want to express, then it is their view. We are seeing the impact of Gaza on the recent UK elections. We will see the impact of Gaza in the forthcoming American elections also. So foreign policy has a domestic impact. There is a reason why the Prime Minister is ensuring that all his events are being televised live, because it does have a psychological, social impact on the domestic electorate. And often politicians on foreign lands are catering to their domestic audiences as well. So I think university spaces, if we can debate transgender rights, then surely we can debate about what is happening in Palestine. I myself have spent 2 months in Palestine when I was studying in university for my master's program. So I'm much more, I've seen the situation on the ground. What the Palestinians by and large are practicing are the principles espoused by Mahatma Gandhi, which is non-violent resistance. Obviously, during the Indian freedom struggle, there were elements who did not believe in non-violence as a form of struggle. They believed in violent resistance, and surely, but that's what we're seeing in the Middle East also. But largely, from my own experience, the Palestinians, when they are fighting for their cause, they believe in the path as espoused by Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi and the path of non-violent resistance. Those are my initial answers to your questions. And if there are another round, I'm happy to take them.
Okay. Sorry. Unfortunately, we will not be able to take too many more questions. Rishita first, and then.
Hello, sir. I actually wanted to ask you about one case that has garnered significant public discourse in recent times is marriage equality case, the same-sex marriage case. To put it in very brute terms, the court's conclusion was that the ball right now is in Parliament's court to make gender-neutral laws with regards to marriage equality. Is there a stance of your party that a bill may be introduced in the Parliament anytime soon?
Good evening, sir. I had one question since you were talking about the fair and efficient proceedings of the Parliament. How would you look at this practice of allocating debate time for certain MPs based on the strength of that particular political party in the House? And secondly, since you're a member of parliament from Assam, how would you look at the regional distribution in the parliament, both in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, following the census and delimitation exercises, and its impact on the efficiency of the parliament, or let's just say the democratic principles of India?
The student in the white t-shirt.
Sir, as you suggested that the senior most MP should be make the Speaker of the Parliament, sir, the average age of Indian Parliament has increased by 8 years from first Parliament to 17th Parliament. Sir, will it not give more space for political parties and old leaders to contest elections? And will it not minimize the chances of youth getting elected? Yeah. Sir, as you have suggested that senior most MP should be made the chair of the Parliament, Speaker. So, sir, average age of Indian Parliament from the first Parliament to 17th Parliament has increased by 8 years, 46 to 54 years. Sir, will it not give more space to old leaders and political parties to give ticket to the old leaders, and it will increase the age of the Parliament by more numbers? And will it not minimize the chances of youth getting elected and their issues be raised in the Parliament?
So is that enough for the second round, or would you like to take a couple? Huh? Okay, sorry, that t-shirt, pink t-shirt. I'm sorry.
Hello, sir. I have a question that when we say politics, politics is something that has been rooted in the Indian society. But when we see in today's context, is it really the same politics that we were wishing for, that people who fought for independence were striving for? Like, politics is something that should be very close to people, as it is very nicely stated, by the people, for the people, and from the people, right? But is it the case today? And the second question that I have is, shouldn't there be something to make the sitting member of parliaments accountable as well? Because if when we talk to someone and we say that this particular thing is not happening, we simply say wait for 5 years, then we'll remove him. But if don't we feel this, that 5 years is a very, very long time when it comes to development? So why wait for 5 years? Don't you think that there should be something that should track the progress and records of a member of parliaments, rather than giving them this immunity that let's wait for 5 years? Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, just one more, okay? And then, because Mr. Gogoi also has to respond. Just, also, sorry, Rajul, I'm sorry.
Hello, Mr. Gogoi. Welcome to NALSAR. My question is the outspokenness of the opposition right now and the desire for greater parliament sitting just a symptom of the recent electoral resurgence of the opposition? Because what we saw factually in the previous parliaments was that when the top opposition party did not have as many seats as it has right now, the greatest of its leaders does not attend the parliament as much as they should have, and you yourself were leading a couple of motions where the country maybe would have expected a leader from the conventional leaders of the party leading it. This is not to suggest that you're not leading the party. There was a time when you were the deputy leader and still leading, with Mr. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary being on the sidelines. So my question is whether this is a mere symptom of electoral resurgence, or is there greater thought to this right now? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So there are enough hands if you want. Huh?
We can probably do a third round.
Yeah, let's.
So let me again just quickly go through them. On same-sex marriage, you saw that the judge has reclused himself. I do believe that it is that we need to be very conscious of the role of Parliament and the role of Supreme Court. The role of the Supreme Court is to interpret the Constitution. It is the role of the Parliament to frame the law. And I don't think we should, and a relationship of equals between the Parliament and the judiciary is good for Indian democracy. So I don't feel that we should go for overreach, that judiciary starts making laws. I think the judiciary is taking the apt approach that it is for the role of the parliament to make the law. Once the law is passed, it is for the judiciary to then interpret it, that whether the law is constitutional or not. I think, suppose we've had the Citizenship Amendment Act that's got passed, and now it's for the Supreme Court to judge its constitutionality. I don't think the Supreme Court should be the space where they are framing laws on immigration, on marriage, on inheritance, on all policy matters. I think that's for the space of Parliament to listen through for a wide audience, through standing committees, through Parliament debates, through the cabinet, to go through that long process of reforms, convening with state legislatures, comparing laws in other parts of the world, and let the parliament come up with the law, perfect or imperfect, and then for the Supreme Court to decide and adjudicate on its constitutionality. So that's what we've seen in the past. We saw the Supreme Court nudge the government in its verdict on triple talaq. That led to the triple talaq law. We also saw the Puttaswamy judgment, in which the honorable judge just declared privacy as a fundamental right. They did not frame the data protection law, right? So the ruling came, and then we framed the law. So I think that's the way forward. And I think that's politics for you, that if you do want to see your rights being advocated for, if you do want to see yourself being seen and represented, then you have to engage with politics. And if you don't engage with politics, tomorrow the NALSA fees might just go up. Tomorrow, your ability, the independent streak of NALSA might not be there. You might not have the right to ask questions of your university administration if you don't like it, right? So the way universities are governed is the fundamental impact of politics. And if you don't engage with politics, then you leave a loophole for universities to be not as vibrant and robust as they are. So I think it's very, very important. And it's only when young people get disenchanted, which creates a vacuum for others to exploit. If young people remain engaged and with politics and remain active and make their voices heard through whatever platforms you have, I think governments are forced to respond clearly, because as political logic, as electoral logic, young people are new voters. Every political party has a vote bank, 30%, 32%, a particular caste math. But it is young people who are voting for the first time at 18, who are not politically rigid in their stance. And therefore, that's where political parties have to be much more nuanced if they want to enhance their vote share. They have to be much more responsive to young people. If young people clearly just switch off, then all political parties will play the politics of their traditional vote banks. I think, therefore, young people have a very important role in the future of India. If you're interested in climate change, you will see political parties being much more active on climate change. If you're interested in educational reform, in examination reform, in the reform of university curriculums, you will see that. But if you're not, then you leave yourself at risk. You leave yourself vulnerable to something that you might not like. So I'm all for more youth activism. And like any other sector, there's always space for reform. Nobody is perfect. And I understand that the Indian politics as it is will always needs to improve itself and always needs to prove itself to the Indian people. I think that's a very good questions that you raised on debate time, because India is a multi-party democracy. You have parties from Tamil Nadu and Andhra with just one MP. And just because they are one MP, should they get only 1 minute speaking time? as opposed to a party which has a lot of MPs but is essentially saying the same thing over and over and again. I think there's a fantastic issue. You've raised the issue of regional representation. So if a particular state, just because it has higher demography, gets more speaking time on its state issues, and a state like Nagaland, which has a smaller demography, has only one MP and therefore only gets lesser speaking time, are we doing justice, and are we being representative? And I think it's a good question, and another uh, thing to look at. So yes, I do feel that that's an issue to be addressed. What is the solution? I do not know, but I would say that especially in a multi-party democracy, especially in a country where states are of all different sizes and demographies, I think that's an important topic to address. There's absolutely no correlation between having a senior most speaker and giving tickets to young people or elder people. There's absolutely no correlation. When a party gives tickets, they want to win. So I don't think the party gives tickets based on who's going to sit on the speaker's chair. The party is going to give tickets to win as many seats as possible. And after, from the list of winners, we see who is the senior most, who can do justice to the speaker's chair, and that person sits. I would like to see more women in the parliament. I think political parties are being risk averse when they're choosing to give more tickets to males. I think we need to change that risk averse attitude. And there are certain regional parties who've done very well in giving much more women tickets in their respective states, and I think that's commendable. Oh, is this demand? The demands that I've made, is this reflective of today's time? I think, I believe you've had Varun Gandhi come and speak at your platform at this event. And if you look at Varun Gandhi's own speeches and if his own writings, then, he said this in the past as well. So as I said, this is something bipartisan. This is something old and new. You have other MPs who unfortunately don't have not got tickets. You had a Jayant Sinha, a very capable person, but for some reason did not get the ticket this time. But again, there are many people who've written very objectively on parliamentary reform, on the role of standing committees, and I think it's a debate continuing to have. And I must say that the Parliament of 2024 definitely is very different from the Parliament of 2014.
So, do you mind if we take a couple more?
Yeah.
Harsha,
sorry.
एक second, please. Harsha, I'm sorry. Aditya?
Sorry, you asked my individuals? So I answered the broader question, and the more substantive question, that in the sense the judiciary is right when they're saying it's the government that frames laws. I think often we're getting into this habit that something is not happening, we are frustrated with government, and therefore we look to the judiciary to frame the law. And I think the judiciary are in that aspect, being very conservative and cautious in ensuring that they are not overreaching their role. But I would like to see the judiciary adjudicate much more expeditiously on matters related to the Constitution. I'm waiting for the ruling on CAA. If we could, I don't see why hearings related to CAA are not happening. The law's been passed, the petition's been expected. I do want to see the judiciary, reach the ruling, and not cases related to the Constitution should not, which affect a far greater section of people, should not be there. But my own individual view, you are seeing more and more countries giving legal sanction to same-sex marriage. There's another petition related to marriage, another case related to marriage, related to marital rape also. So the many aspects related to marriage, you have the Uniform Civil Code, which again deals with marriage. So, unfortunately, marriage is a very political issue in our country's democracy. Abortion is not, but marriage is. So we have to ensure that it happens through a democratic and political process and not a judicial process.
Okay. Aditya, please keep it brief.
Hello, hello. First of all, congratulations on your Johar Lok Sabha victory against all odds. My question is this: that in the last Lok Sabha, the most brazen attempt to use the platform of Lok Sabha, sorry, the most brazen attempt to use the platform of Lok Sabha for government's purpose was on 5th August 2019, and you were there, the deputy leader, and you saw whole process from close quarters. So my question is this only, that if you imagine yourself addressing a Kashmiri crowd, a Kashmiri young crowd, then what would you say to them to instill their faith in parliamentary processes after what they saw in on 5th August in the parliament, and the shutdown which ensued for which followed it? And one more request, I would be very grateful if you could answer Naman Bhaiya's question before my question. Mike, his question, yeah, that the question he asked, that whether the resurgence in the Congress party's performance in Lok Sabha was that possible before also, if Rahul Gandhi could have played a more active role in the Lok Sabha and not before, not now. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think in this round we can only take one because we're almost touching 6 p.m. And yeah.
So, like the way Article 370 was passed, and you've said that how young people in Kashmir would feel if they saw a law being passed in which they did not have agency because their assembly was dissolved. Even states in the Northeast, especially in the Northeast, when the Citizenship Amendment Act was passed, we felt a bit of that here we saw a law being passed which overrides our state protections as guaranteed in the Constitution. All the Northeast states have specific provisions giving them a certain form of autonomy, and we have the Assam Accord, and here we saw a law that just got passed, and we didn't have agency in that. And obviously there will be dissatisfaction. And therefore, in a functioning parliamentary democracy, you have a law which you feel is unconstitutional, you would take it to the Supreme Court. On CAA, we have not heard a ruling from the Supreme Court. And on 370, if there was a ruling which disappointed us, we can express our disappointment also. Fundamentally, for a state assembly to be dissolved and then pass a law in the nation's capital which affects the character of the state, you've made the state into a union territory. You come from, we are sitting in Telangana. There is such a sentiment of having your own state. And obviously we're sitting in also erstwhile Andhra, where there was a sentiment that you lost something which is part of your state. So you can understand that there is a sense of satisfaction for those changing a state's character was a political objective, and they managed to succeed in that political objective. And you could understand a sense of anguish on the other side, for whom there were other matters which were far more important than that state's character being changed. I think both the people of Andhra and both the people of Telangana, the people of Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, and people of Jammu Kashmir, we've all expressed all those emotions that you refer to when it comes to the ruling on August 9, 2019. I am very proud of my leader. As I said, a lot has changed since 2014, especially if you look at Indian media. Indian media used to come up with a very pejorative term for my party's leader. And today, at least Hindi media or new media, independent media, they have a very different view. And I see that he is occupying a constitutional post, the leader of opposition. And while we grant a certain level of respect in our language and our tone, when we talk to people sitting in other constitutional posts, such as the Speaker and the Prime Minister, the leader of opposition is no less an important constitutional post. If you look at the ranking of the rankings, the the post of leader of opposition is at number 5 or number 6. But somehow, in certain spaces, whether in parliament or in media, I think we have not adjusted to the new reality that the Indian electorate has given through its vote in the 2024 elections. The Indian electorate has moved on, and I'm sure the rest will adjust at its own pace. And we will, as any political party, will be responsive to the needs of Indian electorate and continue our path. And when elections come, it's for Indian people to decide. Lastly, I think, how many times do you want elections? If you are unhappy with your MP, do you want an election again after 2 years? And then how do you decide? You might be happy. There might be, out of 10 people, 8 might be happy and 2 might be unhappy, or vice versa. So how do you decide? What is that threshold of that public are unhappy with their public representative, which leads us to a decision that that person no longer is fit for office? So it's a good question. I don't want to reject the question, but you have to answer the threshold question. That what is the threshold for disqualifying an MP, which we've seen in the past, in the last Lok Sabha. Somebody raised a question and got disqualified. It happened to a lady from West Bengal. It happened to my leader. And there are others who are doing, who are involved in far serious cases, and that's not happening. But I think it's an important question from a democracy. What is the threshold? Again, it's a question, how frequently do you want elections? And I believe that if you're unhappy, if the public is unhappy, it's not just the Lok Sabha elections, you have other elections also to express your anger. If you look at people in Delhi, they vote one way in Lok Sabha, vote a different way in Vidhan Sabha, and another different way in MCD elections. So they are, you have multiple avenues to express your disaffection or affection. And therefore, I feel that elections are important. I do not believe, suppose now if we had one nation, one election, then you'll be stuck. But if you have elections at their natural cycle, municipality, state, then after 1 year, 2 year, you can express your affection or disaffection through the state elections. But if you have one nation, one state, and one municipality, then God help you for 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so